And for the AOVs that I used in the Out tab, I can go to the AOV manager and I will just show you all of the AOVs that I added in the render. So I'm just gonna hit plus a bunch of times, so then we can select all of the AOVs that we need. And we are going to need diffuse lighting, and we will separate all of these layers in their respective light groups. So we want to be able to access each individual light's contribution. So in the light group tabs, we will turn on the all light groups option here. And then we will grab the specular lighting and again turn on the all groups. Then we move on to reflections, turn on light groups, and then we also need the refraction as well, so turn this on. And finally we need the global illumination, and of course with the light groups. Aside from this, we also need the world position, so we can map different types of effects and grading based on the position of the objects. And we can also use a cryptomat, and for the ID type here we are going to use material name, so that we can separate the objects based on their materials. So I believe this will give us everything we need. And there's one extra layer that I created separately in a separate Redshift ROP, which if I go to the new composition is going to be this layer here, which is the fog in the back essentially, that I created with just a simple volume. So if I go to the setup for this inside the object tab, this is something I did a lot of times, so you might be familiar with this if you followed any of my other courses. I can go inside this fog geometry and I'm basing this volume on the camera frustum. So again, I'm using the frustum camera HDA from the downloads. I'm using a VDB from Polygons to turn this into a fog volume with a fairly high voxel size. And over here with this object merge, I'm bringing the position of the camera, and I'm using this pack geometry before merging option to turn this camera geometry into one single point, so we can grab their position. And inside the volume VOP, I'm measuring the distance from each voxel to the position of the camera. So here we have this distance, and inside this feed range, I'm remapping the distance from 0 to 25 to values that go from 0 to 1. And then I'm using a ramp to further control this volume. And also I'm fading this volume on the y-axis. So over here I'm grabbing the bounding box and I'm splitting up the vector so I can get the y component, which is the height essentially. And I can then remap these values from 0 to 2 and 1 and 0. And by multiplying our ramp with this value, we are fading this from the top as well. So if I go up, there is a volume visualization here, so we can see this more clearly. If I go inside the camera, this is what we get. And so this volume is fading from the position of our camera towards the end here, and it's also fading upwards on the y direction as well. So this is what this multiply is doing. It's fading it upwards. And for our render layer, I'm just rendering this volume obscured by the sand geometry and also the logo geometry. So this is all this fog layer is really. We could have probably also used the Z-depth AOV to create this fog layer, but since this is a fast setup in Houdini, I just decided to do it with actual volumes. So now we can go ahead and inspect this comp, and we can start from the top.